Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you all to the Tuesday, November 5th, 2013 Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting. The meeting will begin with a flag salute led by Jerry Carden, our County Counsel.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And would the clerk please read the statement of meeting procedures?
Welcome to the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, November 5th, 2013. Agendas are available on the wall outside this meeting room. If you are here to speak on an issue not appearing on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker. The board is not permitted to take action on items addressed under public comment. When you speak, clearly state your name and address for the record. All items on the agenda will be open for the public to address before final action is taken. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which will be monitored by a timer on the podium. If there is a person speaking on behalf of a group with no other testimony from another member of the group, please identify yourself as such, and your time may be extended at the pleasure of the board. Keep in mind that the chairman has discretion of limiting the total discussion time on any item. If you are hearing impaired, we have listening devices available. It is requested that cell phones be turned off or put in the silent mode. Thank you for your participation and cooperation.
Thank you, Ms. Holman. Now is the time for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the board on any item that is not on the agenda? If so, please come forward and state your name and address. There we go. Good morning.
Good morning, all. I'm here to invite you and the public to the Automart Studios tour, which takes place this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It is our 20th annual tour, and we have 75 of Placer's finest artists working from the ancient art of batik to metal sculpture to wood turning and painting. It's really enjoyable. It's suitable for the whole family. It's a great bargain at $10 per passport, and you can enjoy the studios of up to 75 artists who will have their doors open all weekend long. Right?
You guarantee good weather?
We cannot do that, but I'm telling you that we've seen it all weather-wise, and it doesn't matter rain or shine, the tour goes on.
Okay, thank
For
you.
more information, go to placerarts.org, and passports are available at various locations throughout the county.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to address the board on an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move to the Supervisor Committee reports. Any reports from any supervisors?
Yes, I wanted to just fill the board in on the fact that last Tuesday I attended an event in San Francisco by the U.S. Green Building Association, and I was there because Domus, our project in Kings Beach, was honored with an award from them and recognized for really going above and beyond. And Placer County had a lot of very nice things said about us, which doesn't always happen. And so I just really wanted to report back to the board that it was a great event. A ton of folks came up to me afterwards and wanted to know more about how we did it. They understood the particular challenges that we faced in the Tahoe Basin with the TRPA and just sort of the sentiment about development and redevelopment in the Tahoe area. And I made a bunch of extremely good connections, going to follow up with some folks. I think there's some opportunities for the county to partner with the Green Building Association on some other initiatives that they're working on. And just really wanted to say thank you to the board, because without the board and staff support and everybody who worked on that project, we wouldn't have been able to get that sort of recognition and would not have been able to provide good, clean, well-lit, warm housing for folks in Kings Beach. So thank you to my board members, and thank you to all the staff who worked on it, because it's a great project, and the Green Building Association recognized that.
Thank you, Supervisor Montgomery. Supervisor Euler.
Yeah, just wanted to mention that yesterday the San Juan Water Agency and the City of Roseville combined kicked off a campaign they're referring to as Save the Lake. You might have seen something on the news about it.
They had a press conference out at the Granite Bay State Park entrance to Folsom Lake yesterday. Very well-attended event, and it looks like a good coalition of Sacramento interests, both water interests and business interests, are coming together over the concern about the Bay Delta Conservation Plan that the governor has drafted that would divert water through a series of tunnels out of the Delta for use down in Southern California. And unfortunately, to our detriment as well as to the detriment of some environmental concerns in the Delta, what it would do with water levels in the Delta and further encourage the saline intrusion in the Delta. So hopefully as we move forward, Placer County, though not at this point a recognized participant in this little coalition, we can get a little more active with PCWA as well and support these efforts to maintain some of our county of origin water rights that might be in jeopardy through this.
Thank you, Supervisor Euler. Any other board member reports? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda, and I wanted to note that item number 18 has been added, committees and commissions.
Move approval of consent, including item 18.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to have a item pulled on consent for discussion? Seeing none, there's been motion and second to approve the consent agenda with the addendum. All those in favor, please say aye.
Roll call.
Aye. Any
Roll call.
opposed? Oh, roll call.
Montgomery?
Right, thank you.
Yes.
Duran? Yes. Wygant? Yes. Euler? Holmes?
Yes, thank you. Let's see, we're not quite at 9:10, so we'll quickly move to Department Item 9, Master Service Agreement, Administrative Services, IT. Jerry Gomez presenting. Morning.
Good morning, Chairman Holmes, members of the board. Jerry Gammas, Director of Administrative Services. Before I begin with today's item, I just want to introduce Team Acorn to the board. We have Nancy Nittler, Director of Personnel, and Andy Sisk, our Auditor Controller. Andy also chairs the Acorn Executive Steering Committee. And with me is Kathy Buchanan, our Deputy Director of Information Technology. The item before you today is requesting your board's approval to award a 3-year master service agreement in the not-to-exceed amount of $2 million to Cherry Road Corporation of Sacramento, California, for professional services to support the implementation of enhanced system functionalities of the county's PeopleSoft payroll and personnel management system, with an option to extend the agreement for 2 additional 1-year periods at the discretion of the county. In addition, we are requesting authorization for the purchasing manager to execute an initial work assignment with Cherry Road Corporation with a budgeted net county cost of $195,869 to implement the system's enhanced self-service functionality. And finally, we're requesting authorization for the purchasing manager to sign all subsequent purchase orders for initiatives identified within the master service agreement that have been properly budgeted and requisitioned. In June 2004, the County of Placer implemented Oracle's PeopleSoft payroll and personnel management system, commonly known as Acorn. Over the years, the system has been the system of record for all transactions for human resources, benefits, time and labor, payroll, and training activities of the county. Over the years, this system has been jointly managed by the Auditor Controller's Office and the Personnel Department, with oversight and guidance provided by the Acorn Executive Steering Committee. During this period, several minor and major releases have been successfully completed. However, due to technical and functional resources within the managing departments, coupled with competing priorities to meet local, state, and federal mandates, enhance Acorn functionalities that would improve operational efficiencies for all county user departments could not be implemented. In May of this year, an updated centralized Acorn support model to improve efficiencies and facilitate the deployment of new features and system functionalities was developed and now resides within the Administrative Services Department. This team is comprised of 5 IT positions that specialize in Oracle's PeopleSoft application. Today, the department is requesting the award of a master service agreement that will be utilized to augment this team over the period of 3 years during the deployment of 26 enhanced system functionalities identified by county user departments as features necessary to improve business processes and eliminate the duplication of services currently being performed outside the Acorn system. Requests for proposal notices were sent to 160 firms by the Procurement Division, with 7 firms providing proposals for evaluation. These proposals were reviewed by representatives from the Personnel Department, Auditor Controller's Office, Administrative Services, and the CEO's Organizational Development Division, and a recommendation to interview the top 3 firms was provided. Based on the results of this extensive interview process, the most qualified firm identified was Cherry Road Corporation. Staff has negotiated a 3-year master service agreement that supports our objectives for meeting these requirements. The scope of work to implement and develop these functionalities include custom code development, module configuration, query development, business process analysis, best practices recommendations, and staff training. Of the 26 requirements, the top 6 initiatives with an estimated cost of $700,000 were prioritized by the Acorn Executive Steering Committee. These initiatives include employee self-service functionality, centralized driver's license database, emergency contact information database, leave of absence database, employee educational level database, and employee professional standards database. Funding for the first initiative, employee self-service, which enables workflow functionalities to automate current manual processes, has been identified and is being recommended for approval today. Employee self-service will provide employees with the ability to update specific information within the Acorn system that requires approval prior to becoming the official record. These updates include name changes, address information, phone number, emergency contact information, as well as updating benefit life events such as births, adoptions, marriage, divorce, and beneficiary information. Last fiscal year alone, approximately 5,600 personnel action forms were manually processed countywide. Not all fall under these categories, but employee self-service functionality is the initial workflow process being implemented that will be the catalyst for future enhancements or paperless enhancements to the system. This recommendation is consistent with the Information Technology Strategic Plan adopted by a board in 2011, and the remaining initiatives will be negotiated on a case-by-case basis as funding becomes available. Therefore, in order to proceed with the award of a 3-year master service agreement to enhance the functionality of the county's Acorn payroll and personnel management system, including an option to extend for 2 additional 1-year periods, plus the implementation of the first initiative, and authorization for the purchasing manager to sign all subsequent purchase orders for initiatives that have been properly budgeted and requisitioned, your board's approval is required. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions your board might have.
Any questions from board members? Supervisor Duran.
Yes, thanks a lot, Jerry. Appreciate the information. I know that that this is approved, most of the information that is going to be coming as far as what categories and how much the services are going to cost in the future. We'll have that in front of us, but it would have been really helpful to have these 6 items and then a little bracket out there, your best estimate of what the cost would be for each individual. Because I'm sure you have some rudimentary understanding of what the cost is going to be for each one. So,
okay, we'll make sure we include it in the future. Thank you.
Sure.
Supervisor Euler.
Yes, Jerry, as we discussed yesterday, what I would like to see when we talk about efficiencies and investing $2 million in upgrading systems and creating new systems, hopefully that $2 million is either freeing up folks who are currently performing services that they are now, it means they're now at liberty to go do other things, or it's obviating the need for hiring staff. In other words, I'd like to see the corresponding savings. When you refer to efficiencies, I'd like to see those corresponding savings in terms of man hours saved as a result of the $2 million that we're spending on enhancing the technology. So as these items come forward, please do so with an eye toward that, if you would.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Supervisor Montgomery.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. And excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit here. While I don't disagree at all that the Acorn can be improved, and this will go a long way to help improving that and add some features that are going to make everybody's life a whole lot simpler, frankly. The fiscal impact statement, it does indicate that this request is specifically for $195,869, and those funds are already budgeted. But I am a little bit, I won't say concerned, but I would have liked more information on the last sentence, which is all subsequent purchase orders for initiatives identified within the Master Services Agreement will be budgeted and requisitioned accordingly as funding is identified. It would have been useful to me to just kind of have an idea of where we think that funding would be coming from when we identify it. But again, as I stated initially, I don't have a disagreement that this is going to be a vast improvement over what we've got now, and is really going to add to functionality of the Acorn system. So just heads up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the board on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for approval. It's been moved and seconded to approve Department Item 9, Administrative Services Procurement, Master Service Agreement, Administrative Services /IT. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is passed. Thank you. We'll now move to the 9:10 timed item. This is coming from the Board of Supervisors and the Auditor Controller, and it's a presentation of a resolution to posthumously recognize Wendy Bass for more than 24 years of service to the citizens of Placer County. And Andy, who am I presenting this to? Is Ms. Mers here? Or? Oh, there she is. Please come forward. Hello. You can stand it there. Lectern if you like. This is a resolution in the matter of honoring Wendy L. Bass for more than 24 years of dedicated public service to the County of Placer. And whereas Wendy L. Bass, Senior Account Auditor and beloved employee of the Auditor Controller's Office, passed away peacefully on September 24th, 2013, with over 24 years of service to Placer County. And whereas Wendy was a creative, conscientious, and dedicated employee of Placer County in the Auditor Control's Office since September 1989 and was deserving of special recognition for her loyal service. And whereas Wendy, prior to transferring to the Auditor Controller's Office, worked for the Golden Sierra Job Training Agency as an audit clerk too from June 1989 through September 1989. And whereas prior to working for Golden Sierra, Wendy began her service for Placer County Health and Human Service as a chore worker, and whereas during her more than 24 years of service to the county, Wendy's always performed her duties in a professional and competent manner in serving her clients and the public. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Placer County, on behalf of the citizens of Placer County, acknowledge with great appreciation Wendy L. Bass for her many years of dedicated service. And I'd like to bring this down to you.
Thank you.
I just want to express our condolences. And we need a picture. Now, if you'd like to say a few words, it's fine. If you don't, okay. And
You go here.
okay.
Okay. Want me to stay here?
Yeah, you can say Andy speaks. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Supervisor Holmes and members of the board, for honoring one of our employees today. I recently attended Wendy's Celebration of Life event, and it was great meeting members of Wendy's family and some of her closest friends and hearing stories about Wendy's life outside of the office. When I left the event, I was amazed again, but not surprised by how many lives Wendy touched. I now want to tell you a brief story about Wendy's life with her second family, the Auditor Controller's Office. I met Wendy in 1995. In '95, Wendy was a young accounting technician working in the payroll division. I was a young, eager accountant just coming out of college, doing my first audit for accounting. Even though Wendy and I didn't cross paths in 1995, what I remember most about Wendy was her smile. That smile that is forever etched in my memory, and many people that knew her. When I then had the privilege of being one of Wendy's bosses in 2003, I could quickly see that she was an accounting star in the making. Between 2003 and 2013, Wendy moved up the ranks, developing her accounting skills, and more importantly, her customer service skills. As Supervisor Holmes alluded to in the resolution, she was very dedicated. She was our warrant supervisor, and even though on county holidays when everybody was enjoying them, Wendy made an effort to reconcile the bank account for the county, because banks sometimes are open when the county is having a holiday, and that just kind of shows you some of her dedication. But her real knack was serving our special districts. And she was our special districts liaison, and many of the districts really came to know her very well, and she just had that touch that she could provide and really, for lack of a better word, coddle our districts because they really need that accounting assistance. Being our special district liaison, one of her jobs was to receive audit reports. And the two things that I wanted my staff to look at in that audit report is, one, does a special district have a clean audit opinion? And number two, and as Jim and Jack know, go to the back of the report and see if there's any findings. Those are the two tasks. So one day in 2012, she comes to my office and she shows me a special district audit report and says, Andy, look, they did not implement GASB Statement 54, the fund balance standard. I didn't ask her to look for that, but it just warmed my heart, the fact that she recognized that this wasn't, the audit report didn't even have, the CPA firm missed implementing a new accounting standard. And I knew my job was done. In January 2013, we promoted her to senior accountant auditor. And really, that's kind of almost a pinnacle in our office. It's one of the highest levels you can get to, except for the manager and then, of course, the auditor and the assistant. And then I told her, you know, you're going to join me at the GFOA conference in San Francisco. And while she reached the pinnacle of her career in San Francisco, that's also when life threw her a curveball, and she found out that she had this deadly disease called cancer. There is no doubt this employee touched me in so many ways, and I'm so privileged to be one of her friends, and I'm so happy that I got a chance to be with her in San Francisco and enjoying some of the times that she had at the conference and our post-conference activities. We will forever miss Wendy Bass, and she will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Is there anyone else wishes to address the board on honoring Wendy Bass? Thank you. Thank you, Andy. We'll now move to our Office of Education Williams School Report presented by the Superintendent of Schools, Gail Garbolino. Good morning, Gail.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Holmes and members of the Board of Supervisors. Annually, I'm here in front of the Board of Supervisors to report on the Williams schools within the county. You might be aware that in 2000, the ACLU filed a lawsuit against Governor Schwarzenegger at the time for failing to provide appropriate education for underprivileged children. After that lawsuit was initiated in 2004, there was a settlement which was enacted into law creating Williams schools, which are schools across the state of California that fall within deciles 1, 2, and 3. And as a little statistics reminder here, a decile is a 10 equal band. So if we have 1,000 schools in California, there will be 10 equal bands, and they will rank schools and count off the top 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, and put that in decile 10 and 9 all the way down. So we're focusing on deciles 1, 2, and 3. And with that, with the 150 schools that we have here in Placer County, we have a very high-performing county. We do have 2 Williams schools that fit within the definition of a Williams school. With that, they are subjected to additional oversight by the county superintendent and is subjected to additional reporting, which includes an annual report to not only the Placer County Board of Education and the school districts that have Williams schools, but also the Board of Supervisors, hence why I'm here. So with that, the Williams visits are visits that need to be conducted in our public schools within the first 4 weeks of the academic school year, and we search for 4 particular items. We make sure that we have sufficient textbooks, that every child has access to standard-based textbooks. There have been reports in the past, not necessarily in our county, but in other counties where, with the failure of having enough money for instructional materials, that individuals would photocopy textbooks. That does not meet the requirement of Williams, where every child has to have sufficient textbooks. In addition, you have to monitor the facilities of the school to make sure that they are safe and clean. In addition, we have to make sure that the information that they report on the school accountability report card annually is accurate. And we need to make sure that the teachers who are assigned to these schools are appropriately credentialed. So with that, we have 2 Williams schools, as I mentioned earlier, in Placer County. Every 3 years, they rebench the decile, and this last spring, they went through a rebenching, so we have 2 new schools. The new schools that we have are Rock Creek Elementary in the Auburn Union School District and Woodbridge Fundamental School in the Roseville City School District. And I threw up there their API score for you, because that's the state accountability index measure that we use, which is different than the federal, which is different than Williams, and welcome to public education. Very few things are aligned. But I just wanted to throw out that, oops, this is the wrong slide. This is last year's slide. So ignore that slide. I have the slide here. Rock Creek Elementary School District has an API score of 719, and the Woodbridge Fundamental School District has an API score of 753. And I hope the next slides are the correct ones. No, they're not. So we'll go ahead. Rock Creek Elementary School is the school in Auburn Union School District. They do have instructional materials. They do have sufficient instructional materials. The school site is in good repair. There's accurate information on the school accountability report card, and there were no teacher misassignments found, so they had a glowing review. As far as Woodbridge Fundamental School, they also had sufficient instructional materials. The school site was in great repair. There is accurate information on a school accountability report card and no teacher misassignments. And with that, I can answer any questions from the members.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? Supervisor Duran.
Thank you, Gail.
Hi.
If the public is interested in seeing this report, is it published on the website?
I believe it was on the website. I checked yesterday, the report that was in your board packet. Does that have the correct?
Yeah, yeah, it's enough.
Yes. So it's unfortunate that didn't get transferred. So
Okay.
thank you.
Any other comments? We don't have to take action on this. It's just informational. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
again.
Thank you. We'll now move to our 9:20 timed item. Health and Human Services. Yes, I'm okay. Health and Human Services Children's System of Care Informational Update Systems Management Advocacy and Resource Team.
Good morning, Chairman Holmes, members of the board. Richard Connect with the Children's System of Care. I'm pleased this morning to be joined by one of Placer's most ardent and consistent advocates for children and families, the Honorable Colleen Nichols, presiding judge of the Juvenile Court here in Placer, and the chair of the Multi-Agency Smart Policy Board. We're pleased to present this morning a brief update and a little closer look at one element of the county's off-sided Placer model. The department often makes reference to this model when discussing various contracts and service modalities, and it's been many years since we presented the model, its values, and a bit of its history to you, and we'd like to do so this morning. We're mindful that there are new partnerships underway in the county developing new services, and with the ongoing adaptive dilemma in government to often do more with fewer resources, the Placer model provides learning that may be of relevance to others. Born in 1988, the Placer model remains one of very few fully integrated children's systems of care in California. Housed administratively within the Health and Human Services Department, it's actually a blending of HHS, probation, alternative and special education staff and resources, along with our community partners, all within a shared space linked by common training, leadership, and information systems. The system of care history begins in late 1980s when decision makers, including our judges, were desirous to reduce the obstacles to care and provide for more timely services for youth who were in multiple service sectors. I would just draw your attention to the key step in our development. In 1999, the county became one of the first in the state to employ through a contract, a person with lived experience as a parent coordinator to help leaders make their services more transparent and help inform decision-making to make them more consumer-centric. We've been buoyed in the last 10 years, as you are well aware, by a SAMHSA grant in 2005 and the Mental Health Services Act in 2007, which have allowed us to take even further developmental steps. The Policy Board is composed of the designated Superior Court judge, in this case Judge Nichols, the Chief Probation Officer, and the Director of Health and Human Services and/or the County Health Officer, the Deputy Superintendent of Schools, and we meet twice a month in very early meetings on Wednesday mornings to make sure that our services remain seamless, effective, and timely for our youth. By way of context, it's important, I think, to understand that system of care is not a new suggestion. For more than 35 years, Little Hoover Commissions, the Administrative Office of the Courts, the President's Pew Commission have all advocated nationally and at the state level for integrated collaborative care. And we're pleased that Placer has the most integrated system west of the Mississippi, and we think that some of our outcomes are demonstrative of our successes. With that, I'll yield to Judge Nichols, who has additional information for you.
I'm going to stand at the podium.
Sure.
So first of all, this is a unique situation for me. I'm used to facing out. And I know you all can understand that, so I'm going to revert back to my lawyer days and stand at the podium.
Well, we're honored to have you.
Thank you. It really is an odd feeling, I have to tell you. So I did feel that I have a bailiff, I have security. I really have
you're covered.
high-level security, actually, so I'm good. I want to thank you all for letting us present and talk to you about our system as opposed to other counties. I don't know how much, for me, this is the only system I've known because I've been on the court for almost 20 years, and it started before that. So I don't know differently. But I know from talking to my counterparts throughout the state how very different their counties work. We are unique. We are known nationally for our system of collaboration in delivering services to children and families in our county. This is what a traditional county looks like. This is not our county. This is not how we deliver services. In traditional counties, they deliver services in what we frequently refer to as silos. Each county has its own service delivery method, and families must navigate between each of the silos. We realized a long time ago, and how it all started, Richard was very kind. What it really started was Judge Cousins got really mad at everybody for pointing fingers about who was responsible for that child, and to remind us that all of us, that these are our children and our families, and that we collectively are responsible for them. And that's how it started, and then it built from there. So we decided to look at other options, going away from the silo model, because it's not efficient, it's not effective. Agencies were working at cross purposes and still tend to if you let them go back into their silos. What we've realized over time is that collaboration is a delicate matter. It requires a lot of care and feeding. And we have worked hard over the last 20 years, and sometimes with fits and starts, to instill institutional memory in each of our partner agencies so that we can continue to provide these services as across. So what's our model? We try to look at each family first for what their unique needs. I want to give you a picture of a typical family. Now, this is not a family exactly, but it's a model of several. So I have mom who comes into court in our child welfare system. Her children have all been removed because of drug abuse, neglect, maybe domestic violence in the home, etc. Within that family, I have a 14-year-old who has delinquency. He's got charges in delinquency system. I have an 8-year-old who has mental health services and special education needs. And I have a 4-year-old who has severe medical issues due to neglect, all the teeth are rotten, etc. That family crosses all of our different models here. In a traditional county, they would go to each of those agencies separately. We have one team working with one family. They come in one door. It is more efficient and more effective. That's the real key. Efficient because for all of us we're concerned about the money part. Effective because we have better outcomes, and that's really where it's important. I think Richard talked about that. Oh. One more click? Oh, I'm not very technical. We know that collaboration, again, we've learned this over time because we have had some sidesteps, that collaboration has been very effective in providing our services to our children. We look at making sure that we develop service plans for each family in their unique situation. We want to make sure that the agencies are not working at cross purposes. And obviously, as I indicated, it's more efficient and it's more financially efficient as well, which I know is always a big concern. So we wanted to give you a couple of examples of how it works. And these are just a couple of examples, really looking towards delinquency first. We have what's called wraparound services. Now, wraparound services was really started so that we could prevent kids from being placed in placement. As you know, some of the placements are $8,000 to $12,000 a month. A month. So wraparound services treats that child with the services necessary in their home. One of the things I learned earlier, I'm a gardener, so I'm going to use a gardening analogy. If you take a plant that's wilting and dying, and you remove it from its soil and you put it in this great, rich soil that's been amended, it will flourish, right? It will bloom. And if you put it back into that unamended soil, which is the family that didn't have any services while this child was out in placement, it will wilt and die again. There's no other way to do it. So wraparound allows us to work with the entire family in the home as opposed to just the child. Because we all know, especially in a delinquency case, it's not just the child. There are problems in the whole family system, in most cases, not all. So we look at wraparound, we provide services depending on what that family needs. And each family is unique and has a different plan. And each family may have different team members on their wraparound team. So depending on, obviously they're going to have probation, health and human services, maybe someone who specializes in mental health, maybe someone from the Office of Education working on education needs, because as you can imagine, that's a big factor here. It saves us and you a lot of money and avoids about $2 million a year in placement costs. Judge Carney, who couldn't be here today when we rescheduled, and I apologize for that, but we were ruminating over the last 20 years of juvenile court and realizing how we did things differently then and how we're doing them now and the progress that we made, and frankly, the cost savings and the effectiveness, most importantly, on families. We use what's called functional family therapy, and that is a specific evidence-based program that is taught to our child welfare workers, mental health workers, and probation officers, all working together to provide this service to children, mostly in our delinquency system, but also in some of our dependency cases, our child welfare cases. Last year we had 42 families going through the functional family therapy, and this involves, again, not just the child, but the family as well. It has been very effective, and we have, again, avoided many placements out of the home as a result. Functional family therapy is part of the drug court program. So juvenile court, and we have an adult drug court too, but in juvenile court we use the functional family therapy. We're providing drug therapy for the kids, but the functional family therapy with the parents so that they can learn to impose boundaries, because as some of you realize, some of our kids in delinquency court have never had anybody say no to them. There's never been any boundaries in their lives. And so it's really developing a whole system for that child to be successful. The drug court, again, was developed originally by Judge Carney to avoid kids being in and out of home placement. This is just another part of the program, again, to try to keep kids home and successful, and hopefully out of our adult court system, which is unfortunately where I see them. Crisis Resolution Center. Now, I know the term says crisis, but it's not just delivery of crisis services. It is also stabilization for the family. We use this program to provide some direct services. So if a family is in crisis, not usually just a child, and the parents are at odds with the child, they can go into what we call respite care at the Crisis Resolution Center. They have a team that is providing counseling sessions to both the child and the parent at that center. Not only while they're in the center, but ongoing. And that means that we have a lot less children coming into our system, either through dependency or through delinquency. The numbers are pretty phenomenal, and you've received reports further on that, and Chief Hopper can answer those questions too. The ongoing counseling is really a critical part of this to the family, and the counselors at the Crisis Resolution Center are always available to families after the child leaves. Something that's really marked, and I know this is just from 2007, but the last time I did delinquency court as a regular assignment was from 1998 to 2002, at which time our average daily population was probably about 65. We opened that juvenile hall, and we filled it at first, and then we learned how to do things differently and better. Again, for effectiveness. So we're looking at our overall population. Right now, we're about 28 average daily population. Every year I go and have to do an inspection of the juvenile hall. And every year, I'm just going to 1 unit plus the max unit. And again, we have some other reasons why that has. Some of these, the number of 28, actually includes some kids who are facing adult charges, but are housed at the juvenile hall. So again, we use all of these different programs to reduce our overall daily population. I can't read my own writing half the time.
Sorry.
So talk about our overall number of cases in our juvenile court. This is the court numbers. Kids who are on formal probation have reduced significantly. There are many factors that play into this. The programming is part of it. It's not all of it, and I'm not suggesting that it is. Just to kind of give you a number on those. We talked about the placement decreases. It is just astounding. Again, from when I did juvenile court before, and I accept my responsibility for that part of it at that point, to where we are now because of the services we have in place are pretty phenomenal. These numbers are also true in our dependency system. Our out-of-home placements in group homes is significantly lower than most counties. I want to talk a little bit about collaboration and how it works in our child welfare system as well, because we do all, again, work together. What we have learned is that we cannot, as a county, do this on our own. We have to engage our community partners and have them be true partners in providing services to families, especially on the front end at prevention. And that's what differential response is all about. I come from a legal background, court background, so learning all of these agency things was challenging, but over the last 17 years on SMART, I think I finally understand most everything. It is a specific technique and differential response when a family first comes into our system and where they're evaluated to determine what level of services they need, trying to keep them in the community if possible and not to bring them into the child welfare system, because that is a door that you can get in, sometimes hard to get out. So we try to keep families in their communities as best as possible. We have Children's System of Care, obviously. We have Kids First, who provides a tremendous amount of service to our families. Lighthouse, similarly, and the North Tahoe Family Resource Center. They have been amazing partners and really changed everything on the prevention side. I can't tell you the change in the last 6 years, seeing it from the court side. And the cases that we get now are the higher end cases, frankly. We don't get the lower end cases. In 2012, we had 1,800 families served in our community partner agencies, and that, as you can imagine, reduces the number that are actually coming into our court system. These are just some numbers, and I'm not going to go over them specifically. We know that children do better if they can remain with their biological family. Doesn't necessarily mean their parents, but could be grandparents, aunts, uncles, etc. And we've been working very hard in our child welfare cases to keep kids with family. Obviously, there's some legal obligations to first look to family, but it's more than that. It's also doing some extraordinary looking for family, what we call family finding, and we've engaged with our CASA partners to assist us in that regard as well. So it's not just our agency helping doing that, but we have CASA also willing to assist us in that. And that's something that's just kind of developing at this point. As you can see, our placement in group homes, which is the most expensive and least effective, has reduced pretty significantly. We are pretty efficient at getting kids placed back at home when we think it's safe and effective. And we've worked really hard to look at those timelines, making sure that we're not placing children back in the home too soon where they're going to fail again, because that's obviously the most important part. We have some other shared community partnerships. I think Richard talked about SAMHSA, which has really allowed us to reach out into our communities, develop partners with Latino leadership, and our tribal organizations and Sierra Native Alliance, who have been amazing partners for us and really taught us a lot and helped us deliver services differently. We have, again, the early school-based wraparound. The schools are doing some amazing information and intervention with positive behavior integrative, I can never get this right, PBIS, I'm just going to call it that, and what they're doing in the schools. And Kirby School was one of our first pilot schools on that. From what we hear, it's a different place now than it was before with this new program. And it is a collaborative program. We all work together on it. We have our school attendance review board now that is alive and doing quite well and very active, and that has been a change over the last couple of years. This morning, at 7:30 this morning, I was at Lincoln High School because each judge is assigned to a different high school or different county, and we do our student attendance mediation with those. And that's when the kids who are not showing up to school get to show up at 7:30 in the morning with their parents and meet with the judge and the probation and someone from their school, and usually the school resource officer is there, et cetera, to try to work on a plan to explain why they're not getting to school, how we can help them to get to school, what's preventing them from coming to school. And that's all part of that SARB prevention, trying to keep them from getting into SARB in the first place. And we always like to use this because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. And if one of us doesn't share the toys or take responsibility for them, the other one pays, because it just all shifts. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from board members? Supervisor Montgomery.
I don't actually have a question, but I want to thank you for coming today and taking the time to present, and Richard as well. And I'd also really love to offer, if you make it up to Tahoe, I would love to take you on a tour of the new community house. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the North Tahoe Family Resource Center is collaborating with a number of groups to co-locate, and the county's hopefully going to be able to get our own presence in that same building to create that intersection of services all in one place, again, to meet the same sort of goal. And I would just love to take you on a tour of it.
They do keep me apprised of what's going on at our meetings. They update me because I'm kind of, limited on the time that I spend in these things, but I'm certainly aware that they were doing that. I would love to come up and see that, or, I'm happy to answer questions or do a presentation if people want that to happen. I'm happy to do that.
Excellent.
I just need advance notice so that I can do that.
I will follow up with you on
Yeah,
that.
I'm
Thank
easy
you.
to find.
That's what I understand.
Yeah.
Just get arrested.
Yeah. Anybody else?
You mentioned CASA, and I know that's a very important piece of our puzzle.
Thank you. I forgot.
But for those that don't know what CASA stands for, could you explain what CASA does?
And, I wrote down, but again, I can't read my own writing,
Well-
as to talk about CASA and their partnership. CASA stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocate.
Right.
They are volunteers who work and are essentially assigned to a child or a sibling group, and we call them the eyes and ears of the court. Because what a CASA does is meet, and they're there just for the child. They're not there for the parents or for the social worker or anybody else, just there for the child. They frequently will go to IEP meetings. They will make sure that child school issues are being taken care of. It's a really big issue, including kids in group homes who, sometimes are alienated from their family for a variety of reasons, and this person is there for them. They write reports, and they come to court, and they write reports for the court. They really give us a different view of what is happening with that child and with that family. In addition, CASA has a program called Family Mentoring, which is, all those things that our parents taught us how to do, like go to the grocery store, meal plan, write a menu, I guess that's the same thing as meal plan, keeping our house clean and organized. Not all of our folks know how to do that. And CASA has a program called Family Mentoring. It is, again, volunteers assigned to that parent or parents to help them develop a home system. And it has had an amazing success. The people that have, because it's a volunteer, the parents have to agree to it. The people who have participated in it have they've bloomed. All of a sudden, They know how to do things that they didn't know how to do before because nobody taught them. They weren't parented well, and so they don't know how to parent. It's very interesting to watch. And thank you so much for bringing that up.
It's a very valuable resource for our children.
I had the report sitting on my desk, but we do actually have a waiting list of kids to get for CASA, so that I know there is a big push for additional volunteers, but our CASA program has been tremendous. Such a help to our children and families. So,
Richard, did you have anything to?
No, I just appreciate the board's support over the years for the system of care. It's your profound support for us has fostered great success for Placer Youth, and thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of the board, I just want to express our thanks for all the hard work you do for our young people. And the Placer model is something that we take with us, and we're very proud of it, and it's all because of the hard work of all of you involved. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Where are we now? Hey, right on schedule. 9:50, Facility Services, annexation of California American Water property to County Service Area 28, Zone 173, Dry Creek. Kevin Bell, good morning.
Program Manager with Facility Services. And I'm here this morning to request your board hold a public hearing to annex the California American Water property located near the intersection of PFE Road and Willerga Road into Placer County Service Area 28, Zone 173, or Dry Creek. CalAm requested the annexation of the parcel to provide sewer service to a water tank booster station that will include a bathroom. A negative declaration for the project was certified by the Placer County Planning Commission on October 7, 2007. And if the annexation is approved, the applicant will be charged the reimbursement fee in effect at the time that they choose to make payment. Earlier today, your board took action to lower the reimbursement fee from $5,592 per EDU to $2,723 per EDU for the Dry Creek West Placer Community Facilities District 1, which this parcel is tributary to. Staff supports this request, and the action that we have for you this morning is to hold a public hearing, and after the public hearing, adopt the resolution included in our staff report to annex parcel 023221051 into the Dry Creek CSA. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that your board have.
Any questions from board members before I open up the public hearing? Seeing none, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the board on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for action. Moved and seconded to approve the annexation of California American Water property to County Service Area 28, Zone 173, Dry Creek. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the item is moved. Thank you. Not quite 9:55. So we'll move to... No. Huh? Item 10? Well, at this time, we will move to item 10. And this is a very important commendation coming from the Placer County Board of Supervisors. And we're being asked to adopt a resolution commending Dr. Richard J. Burton, MD, MPH, for over 30 years of dedicated public service and congratulate him on his retirement. And I am deeply honored to present this to Dr. Burton. If you would please come to the lectern. Dr. Burton, I want you to know that this is a very special commendation. Next month, the Board of Supervisors will be presenting their commemorative coins, and you have a commemorative coin embedded in your resolution, so you won't have to have two things on your wall. This will all be in one.
Thank you very much.
Anyhow, that's coming from me and the Board of Supervisors.
Excellent.
So please indulge me while I read some very nice words. Whereas Dr. Richard James Burton has been an outstanding leader and dedicated public servant during 17 years as Placer County Public Health Officer, and almost a decade as Director of the County Health and Human Services Department. And whereas Dr. Burton has been a guiding light in his department's implementation of the Placer model, which we just heard about, a collaborative, integrative approach that is nationally recognized for providing high-quality, cost-effective services to the public. And whereas Dr. Burton is well known and respected for his unwavering dedication to public service and a strong commitment to protecting the county's most vulnerable residents and to improving health and wellness in communities throughout Placer County. And whereas Placer County recognized Dr. Burton's contribution by presenting him with its 2000 Outstanding Leadership Award, and whereas Doc Burton's leadership style, combined with a willingness to share credit for his department's successes with his dedicated staff, courageous clients, and community groups, and a commitment to team building that will ensure he will leave behind a dedicated team of professionals who will continue providing outstanding services to the public. And whereas, with Placer County support, Dr. Burton took a temporary assignment as state epidemiologist. Didn't you? I could say that, did you? And Associate Director of California Department of Health Service in the aftermath of the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks because of his expertise and leadership were needed to help coordinate the state's emerging bioterrorism preparedness efforts. And whereas Doc Burton played an active role in many professional organizations, serving as the president of both the County Conference of Local Health Officers and the Health Officer Association of California. And whereas on November 5th, 2013, Dr. Burton received his commemorative coin from Board Chairman Jim Holmes for his exemplary leadership and impressive legacy on behalf of the Placer County residents. Now, therefore, let it be known that the Placer County Board of Supervisors congratulates Dr. Richard James Burton on his upcoming retirement and recognize him for his many years of outstanding service to Placer County, the state of California, and the United States. Dr. Burton will be missed greatly, but he will leave behind a legacy of inspirational leadership that will not be forgotten. The board wishes Dr. Burton the best of luck in his future adventures with his wife Ruth and their 3 daughters, Rachel, Hannah, and Sarah. Congratulations. I'll be honored to bring the flowers. We're gonna have some photos. You don't mind, do you?
No, I'll never pass up a chance to hug her. Well, thank you very much. It's certainly been a pleasure and a privilege to be able to work for Placer County and have the experiences that I've been able to share with the other county employees, learn so much from the staff that I've gotten to work with and the other county leaders. Appreciate the encouragement and the counsel from all of you and previous board members and county execs and employees of Placer County. One of the I also want to make, so I appreciate the models of leadership and team building that I experienced while I worked in the Navy and served with the Marines. They've served me well and taught me a lot as a fresh doc just coming out of medical school, so I appreciated that. One of the things we acknowledge in Health and Human Services on a regular basis is the importance of influences in all of our lives, and that we all have stories. And one of the privileges I know of being able to work here as long as I have is that I benefited from learning the stories of many of the folks I work with and many of the clients that we've worked with over the years. And I'd like to acknowledge a few people that have been a part of my story. I'd like to acknowledge my parents, my mom and dad sacrificed so much to provide me. My wife reminded me that I should breathe as I go through this, so remember that. Yes. But they sacrificed so much to provide opportunities for myself and my siblings that they never had. And my middle name, James, is named after my grandpa. And he's probably the strongest male influence in my life. And he grew up on a farm. When he was young and they were logging, a tree fell on his ankle and broke it, and they didn't have access to doctors. And it didn't heal very well. And he had pain for the rest of his life. He immigrated to California and never finished high school, but found a job, became a citizen of the country. Got married and had my dad and my uncle, and loved his wife dearly. Unfortunately, she contracted polio when she was like 25 and was confined to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. And yet my grandfather never lost hope and optimism and cared for her dearly and provided stories of sacrifice on his part for the sake of this woman that he loved. And then she died actually the year I was born. And as my dad and my uncle came back from World War II, my uncle, who was a gifted poet and an artist and a skilled rancher and a horseman, but he also suffered from chronic and severe mental illness. And at the time, treatment wasn't very good. And he self-medicated with alcohol for 20 years or so. I'm happy to say that he found sobriety and he found treatment, and he was able to achieve those things in his heart that he had always hoped to. But all during that time of his adulthood life, as I lived with my grandpa, I saw him tenderly love his son, accept his mental illness, and live with hope that recovery was around the corner and he'd be able to do great things. And my uncle did that. That example of my grandfather, some family stories of other health issues that we experienced in our family, certainly motivated me to go into medicine, and a belief that there had to be possibilities for people being able to be cared for differently, that they wouldn't have to live with the chronic pains as much or not being able to access treatment. But as I came out of medical school, I met the greatest influence in my life. It's my dear wife, Ruth. Because you see, going through medical school, I had focused, and I had learned a lot about humans, and I knew a lot of physiology, and I was pretty darn good with pharmacology and treatment. But until I met Ruth, I didn't know very much about being a human being. And she actually helped me discover the right side of my brain that carries the emotions and the richness that life can hold in relationships. And so I'm forever grateful for the greatest influence in my life and inspiration for the last 30 years as we've been married. And I look forward to the next 100 years that we experience together. Because you see, I'm still an optimist when it comes to the advances in medicine that will take place. But thank you very much for the opportunity to have been a part of the Placer team. And I look forward to the great things that I know I'll continue to witness as the leadership of this board and the CEO and the team of county employees here partnering with the residents that have so many strengths and gifts and continue to cause Placer County to thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think I'll have someone bring in some handkerchiefs. That was very, very touching, and thank you so much, Dr. Burt, for your testimony there. We appreciate it. And now we'll move to, it's a hard act to follow. Where are we here? Oh, item 11? Huh? Oh. We'll now move to our 9:55 timed item, Facility Services. Annexation of Whisper Creek property to County Service Area 28, Zone 173. This is a public hearing, and Mr. Bell is back.
Good morning, Chairman Holmes and members of your board. Again, I'm Kevin Bell, and I'm here this morning to request that your board hold a public hearing to annex the Whisper Creek subdivision properties into the Dry Creek, the Placer County Service Area 28, Zone 173, or Dry Creek. The property is located near the intersection of PFE Road and Don Julio Boulevard. Dry Creek Waterworks, LLC, requested annexation of the parcels to provide sewer service to a 104-lot subdivision, which is consistent with the county general plan densities for that area. An environmental impact report for the project was certified by your board on August 7th, 2007. And as discussed with the previous item, if approved, the applicant will be charged the reimbursement fee in effect at the time that they choose to make payment. Again, earlier today, your board took action to lower that reimbursement fee from $5,592 per EDU to $2,723 per EDU, which results in a total reimbursement fee of $283,192. Staff supports this request, and the action that we have for you this morning is to hold a public hearing and at the end of the hearing adopt the resolution included in our staff report to annex parcels 023, 260, 002, 006, 007, and 017 into the Dry Creek CSA. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from board members before I open up the public hearing? Seeing none, this is a public hearing. Open up the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to address the board on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Facility Services annexation of Whisper Creek property to County Service Area 28, Zone 173, Dry Creek. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. The item is moved. Thank you. And now we will move to our 10 o'clock timed item, Community Development Resource Agency. You're not Roy Schaefer. You're Melanie Jackson. Melanie Jackson presenting. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, thank you. Today I'm here to present the Black Hawk Lane Minor Land Division. It's located off of Black Hawk Lane in the Forest Hill area. The property is currently zoned residential forestry with a 160-acre minimum and a planned development of 0.05 acres. The applicant is requesting that the zoning change to residential forestry with a building site designation of 20 acres to be consistent with the remainder of his property and to allow for a minor land division of the 53-acre parcel into a 21-acre parcel and a 32-acre parcel. The application was taken before the Planning Commission on August 22nd, 2013, and the Planning Commission took action to approve the minor land division and to recommend approval of the rezone. And today the Planning Services Division is here to recommend approval of the rezone and to recommend adoption of the mitigating negative declaration and errata, and to adopt the rezone ordinance that's included as attachment C in your staff report. And we base this recommendation on the proposed zoning consistency with the Forest Hill Divide Community Plan, which is a rural estate 4.6 to 20-acre minimum, and is also consistent with the surrounding zoning and surrounding parcel size. With that, I'd like to answer any questions.
Any questions from board members before I open up the public hearing? Supervisor Montgomery.
I don't have any questions, but Melanie, I just want to say thank you to you and planning staff for listening so carefully to the Forest Hill Forum. I know that the project proponent made some fairly substantial changes to his proposal based on the input from the forum, and I think it was really the right decision, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For carrying that forward. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, this is the public hearing. I'll open the public hearing for anyone who wishes to address the board on this item, the Blackhawk Lane rezone and minor land division. Anyone wish to address the board on the item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
Move approval.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 6, Community Development Resource Agency, Blackhawk Lane rezone and minor land division. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The item is moved. Thank you. Right on time. Now is the time for another commendation. And it's been a day for commendations, but this one is no less important. We're going to honor Dave Keys, who is retiring from the Placer County Sheriff's Department, and it's my honor to present him with a commendation, or a resolution. Looks like you want to please come forward, Captain Keys? Whereas David Keys is retiring from the County of Placer Office of the Sheriff after serving that agency and the citizens of this county for nearly 29 years. Did it go fast? Yeah, sometimes. Whereas David's desire to excel led to his graduation from the FBI National Academy in 1994 and from the California Command College in 2000, and led to his promotion through the ranks to that of captain in 2001. His dedication to the office of sheriff and the citizens of the community was exemplary. Throughout his career, he has performed at a high level. He is a skilled manager, outstanding budget administrator, and was instrumental in the formation of the organization's 5-year strategic plan. He currently serves as terrorism liaison, office coordinator to the Sacramento Regional Terrorist Threat Assessment Center, and whereas his community involvement is exemplary as a representative to the Highway 49 Business Association, serving as president in 2000, and serving on the North Auburn Municipal Advisory Council. Dave was also a member of the Placer County Law Enforcement Chaplaincy Board of Directors and currently serves on the Auburn Salvation Army Advisory Board, where for 5 years he organized and led the Sheriff's Office to victory in the Battle of the Badges Kettle Drive competition. And whereas David has worked in almost every area within the department, including patrol in Auburn and the North Lake Tahoe substation, corrections, as commander of the South Placer substation, and since 2004 as commander of the Auburn Field Operations Division. Dave is a valued member of the Sheriff's executive team and has performed with unfailing professionalism and conscientious attention to duty throughout his career. Now therefore let it be resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Placer, on behalf of the citizens of Placer County, acknowledge with great appreciation the exceptional service of David Keys and wish him well in his retirement and future pursuits. Congratulations. This is the lady that supported this guy for 29 years when he was out and about protecting us.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, thank you so much. It has been a blessing to work here in Placer County, and I want to extend special thanks to my wife as well, as she is definitely part of the Placer team as well. So when the phone rings in the middle of the night, it wakes her up as well. But It's been wonderful to work in so many parts of this county. I think that's one of the great things about working for a sheriff's office is in a 29-year career, you get to work in a lot of different things and in a lot of different geography. And when I first hired on here, they asked if I was willing to go to Lake Tahoe. And absolutely, what a beautiful place to work and talk to people and drive around that beautiful lake. And then just the opportunities I've had throughout my career here have been wonderful. It has been a blessing. One of my favorite memories is when we adopted our daughter, and I asked if the sheriff would be the bailiff in her ceremony. And the judge that I used to wake up at 3 in the morning for narcotic search warrants, if he would be the judge that would officiate, Alan Panesci. And it's that kind of family that has been really representative of my career here. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Supervisor Montgomery has a comment.
Yeah, Dave, before you escape entirely, I really wanted to mention that, Dave is a man of many talents, and he recently friended me on Facebook, which I was absolutely delighted about. But I wanted to let people know that he's an incredible photographer, if you don't know that. I have here on my iPad, let's see, get it where the camera can see it. I have a link to his Facebook page and to his website, but he is an absolutely incredible photographer of both nature and human-built structures. I've just had a few days to really look over his site, but check it out. This man is an incredible talent, and it just astonishes me that somehow he managed to keep his light hidden under a bushel for, too many years. But it's davekeysphotography.com if anyone's interested. And no, he's not paying me to say this, but, it just reinforces my belief that the folks we have who work for us at Placer are not only so good at what they do for us as a county in their official roles, but they're so good for our community. And Dave, thank you for your time. Best of luck and congratulations. This is just delightful. I'll be following your photographic exploits on Facebook, so thank you.
Thank you, David. Congratulations. Let's see, I think now we're at the point of our meeting, the 10:15 timed item. County Executive Public Safety Realignment AB 109 update.
Right on time.
Advertisements. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Holmes, members of the board, Becky Riggin from the County Executive Office. I'm pleased to be here this morning with members of Placer County's public safety system to provide an update to your board on the implementation of public safety realignment, also known as AB 109. I am joined this morning by Captain Wayne Wu from the Sheriff's Office, Chief Probation Officer Marshall Hopper, Captain Ron Lawrence from the Rocklin Police Department, and Maureen Bauman, Director of Health and Human Services Adult System of Care. Just over a week ago, many of us had the opportunity to attend the 3rd Annual Conference on Public Safety Realignment in Sacramento. This was sponsored by CSAC, the Chief Probation Officers of California, and the Cal State Sheriff's Association. Once a year, justice officials and staff from across the state convene to share their innovative approaches to managing these realigned offenders. And the theme of this year's conference was integrating resources to achieve successful outcomes. Reports from county panels focused on 2 primary areas. 1, the importance of working collaboratively to ensure data-driven decision-making and policy setting. And 2, the importance of effective planning for offenders who are transitioning back into our communities. Chief Hopper and Chief Lawrence were invited to speak at the conference on the county's Special Investigations Unit and their interagency approach to risk-based community supervision. And they will be sharing a few highlights from their presentation today. Some good news in regards to AB 109 is that last November, California voters approved Governor Brown's Proposition 30, which created a constitutional amendment protecting ongoing funding to the counties for realignment. This amendment prohibits the legislature from reducing or removing funding to the counties in the future. In fiscal year 2013-14, more than $1 billion in annual funding will be provided to the counties for implementing this legislation. However, even with guaranteed allocations, counties remain concerned that the amounts appropriated are insufficient to meet the requirements for detaining, supervising, and programming these new offenders, and to effectively address the complex drivers of recidivism. Many county jails, including Placer, have been forced to release inmates because they lack enough space to meet the increased demands of this legislation. Placer County's public safety officials continue to meet regularly to assess system impacts from this legislation and to develop cost-effective strategies that protect the public and balance offender accountability with opportunities for rehabilitation. Our local policy discussions are consistent with those we heard from our peers across the state last week. Through our efforts with the county's consultant, we continue to incorporate data into our policy discussions and decision-making. And through the planning efforts underway for the new transition center at the Santucci Justice Center, we are ensuring effective reentry planning for the offenders transitioning back into our communities. So at this point, I will turn the discussion over to our presenters, beginning with Captain Wu and perhaps his last official duty as Placer County's jail commander before he assumes his new role as the captain of field operations.
Good morning, Captain Wu.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for your time today. Captain Wayne Wu representing the Sheriff's Office, and as Becky mentioned, with Captain Key's retirement, I'll be transferring to our Field Operations Division. But here today to speak about the impacts of the second year of implementation of AB 109 and what that's done to our Correction Division here at the Sheriff's Office. And I did spend the last year, obviously, as the jail commander and witnessing these impacts firsthand. We felt a significant impact in year two of AB 109. While we saw some increases in our average daily population, or ADP, in the first year, I think we really started to see it kick in and started to experience some of the other things that came along with housing this type of offender, from inmate sophistication to the gang activity and the level of violence in our facility. Currently, our AB 109 kind of overview of this, what's going on in our jail is they occupy roughly, and obviously the figures vary week to week, but about 25% of our inmate population is as a result of AB 109. As far as our sentence population goes, they account for 50% of our sentence population. And we're pretty proud of that number, basically, that we have, our jail usually averages, when we take a look at the numbers, about 50% of our inmates are pretrial and 50% are sentenced. Throughout the state, a large average is 70% of county jail inmates are pretrial. And we really credit that to some of our partnership work and progressive innovations early on with some pretrial programs working with probation. Our longest sentence right now is 8 years, 4 months. And total system impact as of last Friday, due to AB 109, we'd had 1,280 inmates come into the Placer County Jail as a direct result of AB 109. Obviously, those numbers are a little higher than what CDCR predicted we would be experiencing at this time. I mentioned our average daily population. We refer to it as ADP. Some of the stats I'm going to go through over the next 3 slides, we took a look at, and they might vary from some of the numbers you've seen in the past for ADP numbers, because what we did was we looked at implementation date of AB 109. So you may have seen previous presentations where we talked about our ADP for the year. This is from October 1 to September 29. So what we're going to show you today is the year before implementation, the first year, and then the second year impacts of AB 109. So in 2010-11, the year before AB 109 was implemented, our average daily population in the jail was 537 inmates. Now, the jail's capacity is 646, and our operational capacity, or what we like to refer to as the 90% area where we need to operate to efficiently classify and house inmates and manage the jail, is 581 inmates. After the first year of AB 109, 11-12, our ADP climbed to 588. This second year of AB 109, which we just concluded, we averaged 620 inmates was our ADP. This has had a direct impact on our classification division, who's understaffed. Those guys are working day and night to try to keep public safety a priority and make sure we're still housing the correct offenders and that they're appropriately housed. As your board's aware, The county jail is currently under a federal consent decree that manages our population. The consent decree basically states that at 90% of our population, which we just talked about was 581, that we may release offenders. At 100% or 646, we must release offenders. We also gives us the ability to close the front door. We can refuse to accept people. Obviously, we don't ever want to go down that road. We realize that always having an empty jail bed for the officer in the field who has to remove an offender from a volatile situation is critical to public safety. In 1011, we have different kinds of releases that we utilize. So we have credit time served, or what we call CTS, which you'll see up there, which is basically our sentenced inmate population who we have to release from the facility early due to overcrowding. And then we have our PTA, or promise to appear releases, which those are pretrial offenders who are waiting to go to trial, and we release them on a promise to appear with a court date, and we hope they show up for court. Obviously, we don't like to do those as well. Those have an impact on the system when offenders either are out on their promise to appear and commit a new offense, or fail to show up and waste the court's time and attorney's time and bog down the system with inefficiencies. So when we look at the year before AB 109 implementation, our credit time served releases, we released 106 inmates on credit time served early off their sentence. And on promises to appear, we released 209 inmates. As we move on to 1112, which would be the first year of AB 109, they climbed to 193 inmates released early on their sentence, and we had to release on promise to appear 416 inmates. We jumped to year 2. The credit time served jumps to 515 inmates, which totals 11 years of unserved sentence time that we released out of the jail last year. Promises to appear skyrocketed to 1,453 inmates. We also had to implement a new policy. I mentioned that we can actually close and refuse to accept people. You'll see that no pickup column of 354 inmates. What those are inmates that fail to appear in court and get arrested in another jurisdiction. In the past, our transportation division would go to another county, pick those inmates up, bring them back to be held accountable, and show up for court in Placer County. But we know by looking at that inmate's charges and background that we're going to waste the resources to pick that inmate up, go to another county, they're going to get to our jail, and we're immediately going to release them per the federal court order as it is. So we've had to refuse to pick up inmates, and that number is 354. Now, one of the significant things that's happened, I think, in year 2 is the increase in inmate sophistication and violence within the facility, and noncompliance with our officers who are working in there on a day-to-day basis. We're seeing this in all aspects, in all housing units of the jail, not just the ones where it's primarily AB 109 inmates. That prison culture has spread, and it's started to take hold in all of the other housing units as well. Over the last 6 months in our direct supervision housing unit, where we have one officer who sits in a housing unit with over 100 inmates, we've had 2 small-scale riots. Due to the issues we've had in those housing units, we've had to increase the staffing levels and put 2 officers in each one of those direct supervision housing units. That wasn't budgeted positions, and that is going to increase costs for the corrections division this year. So as we look at the levels of the amount of contraband incidents and the level of fights that we had in the facility the year before AB 109, we had 53 incidents of contraband and 136 fights. Year 1 remained somewhat flat. We had 36 incidents of contraband and 134 fights in the facility. As I said, I think the prison culture has really started to take hold during this second year, and the fights and contraband jumped significantly. Contraband climbed to 176 incidents, and we had 238 fights in the facility. Now, some of that could be attributed to the jump in the population and our ADP, but if you really look at the ratio of our population increase to the ratio of fights, I think it's directly attributable to the type of inmates we're housing now. In closing, the Sheriff's Office is working closely with our criminal justice system partners to do the best we can to keep public safety a priority in Placer County. We're taken advantage of some new legislation to look at working with probation to institute work furlough again. Whereas also AB 624, which allows us to award up to 6 weeks of credits off somebody's sentence for participation in educational, vocational, and evidence-based programs while they're in custody. Unfortunately, those are limited to only AB 109 inmates, and we're working at the Criminal Justice Policy Commission level to try to maybe extend those to all of the inmates within the facility. In May, your board approved a Phase 1 opening plan for the South Placer Jail. I'm happy to say that so far we're on pace as far as the Sheriff's Office is concerned to still open those 80 beds in May as we projected. But in looking at the numbers and the population increases, it is only 80 beds. And we feel it is a priority that to keep the criminal justice system integrity in Placer County, that we continue to move towards opening the rest of the beds at South Placer Jail. That's all I have. If you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Captain Wu? I have a question. You said you had an inmate in there that's been sentenced for over 8 years?
8 years, 4 months is our longest, yes.
And what's the likelihood of that individual completing that term, the 8-year term, do you think? I know you probably can't make the...
The entire term, probably not likely. The inmate is actually a female, and that's where we really lack sufficient bed space, is female housing. Obviously, we're trying to keep the 1170H prisoners in custody the longest, but I'm sure as she progresses closer to the end of her sentence, she may be considered for Fed cap release, depending on what our population looks like.
And that's someone that's been paroled to county custody, the individual? Been paroled to county custody?
This individual?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Any questions from board members? Okay, thank you, Captain Wu.
With that, I think I'll turn it over to Chief Probation Officer Marshall Hopper. Thank you for your time.
Well, good morning, members of the board, Honorable Chair, Mr. Bosch. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Kind of go over some of our impacts of Pro Realignment. Pro Realignment is one of the most significant changes in the history of our justice system. Prior to realignment, many of these offenders were previously sentenced to the California Department of Corrections. But today, that option no longer exists. This has caused offenders to serve longer sentences in our county jail, placing additional impacts on our correctional system, as Captain Wu just mentioned during his portion of the presentation. But all of these offenders do have one thing in common. All of the AB 109 offenders currently impacting our system, they will all get released from custody, and they will all be released back into our community. Therefore, the need for reentry services is more critical than ever before. Probation is a critical component of our justice system, providing recommendations to the court, holding offenders accountable, supporting the collection of victim restitution, while providing treatment and rehabilitative opportunities as each one of these AB 109 offenders are released back into our community. Our department is committed to public safety and making a difference through collaborative partnerships. The second component of realignment is the ability to sentence an offender to a local prison sentence serving a portion of their sentence, for example, a straight sentence. A straight sentence is basically the concept of an individual serves their custody time in our jail and are released into the community without supervision. Our split sentences are individuals that are sentenced and serve a portion of their sentence, followed by a term of supervision. So having that in mind, as I go into our second-year impacts, I'll go over some of these terms. Second-year impacts, we've received a total of 345 post-release community supervision cases. PRCS offenders complete risk needs assessments, and our probation officers set up individual case plans to address offenders and provide them guidance as they're out in our community. Probation also uses evidence-based interventions and appropriate sanctions to help offenders as they transition. Now, of those 345 cases, 127 of them have transferred out of Placer County, meaning that at some point they did not reside in Placer County or they moved or relocated during their term of supervision. So those cases were transferred out to the county of their residence so they can receive appropriate supervision. Our probation officers continue to provide a balanced approach, holding offenders accountable, and at the same time providing direction and recommendations to appropriate programming. In fact, we have had 65 PRCS offenders, those that were released from the California Department of Corrections, successfully complete their term of supervision. And what that means is these individuals made it 1 full year without returning to jail, without a new crime, without a technical violation, and without receiving a flash incarceration. Those offenders were successfully completed their term and are off probation supervision at this time. Now, taking a look at some of the PRCS numbers and trends over the last 24 months, the PRCS population reached a high point in April of 2013. At that time, we had 178 PRCS offenders under our supervision. Since then, the active PRCS population seems to be trending downward. At the end of the 2-year mark, we had 147 PRCS offenders under our supervision. Now, going back to some of those discussions that I mentioned about the other types of sentenced offenders, the split sentences and the straight sentences, we have received approximately 300 straight sentences. Again, those are the cases that serve their entire local prison sentence in our jail and are released into the community without supervision. We've also received 23 split sentences, and again, those are the cases that serve a portion of their jail term or local prison sentence, in our local facility and are released with supervision under the probation department. You know, our community AB 109 supervision approach includes probation officers, our team from the Special Investigations Unit, and our HHS practitioners that are now assigned to our department. And together they account for over 3,800 unannounced home contacts and over 3,300 office contacts with the PRCS cases and those split sentence cases that I previously mentioned. Now, I think there's one important thing to consider when we talk about the impacts of Pro Realignment with our department. The AB 109 realignment offenders account for approximately only 10% of the offenders under our jurisdiction or under our supervision. Therefore, in order to utilize our resources and account for our entire population, our high and medium risk offenders, we utilize appropriate treatment recommendations for the entire population as well as the AB 109 offenders. Currently, we supervise over 3,000 adults on formal probation, in addition to 657 participants on our alternative sentencing programs, which include electronic monitoring, adult work release, drug court, and our pretrial services programs. Over the last few years, we have optimized our caseloads to allow probation officers to increase contacts with offenders while making appropriate recommendations. And since 2012, we have had 921 offenders enroll in and successfully complete various educational and counseling programs while they were being supervised by our department. In regards to future actions and planning, we continue to work with our criminal justice consultant and our justice partners in the community to plan and develop our new transition center, which was recently approved for construction by your board. We anticipate construction being completed sometime in late spring. The new center will be identified as the Placer Reentry Program, PREP. In addition, we will continue to work on our court notification system, another operation that was recently approved by your board, a concept that will increase the appearance of offenders in court through a court notification system, and we are working with the court to develop a data transfer process to ensure the seamless transition. It is anticipated that the court notification system will reduce the number of failure to appears in our system and save time for our justice partners as well. Now, in regards to the future, we will continue to evaluate each offender, all of the offenders, as I mentioned, developing case plans and providing additional tools. As you saw earlier during the CSOC presentation, partnerships are critical, and partnerships get results. Therefore, I will continue to work with and develop and expand our community supervision partnerships with our local treatment providers as well as our justice partners, and hope to provide a balanced approach to offender supervision and accountability. When you think of public safety, many often think of locking up the bad guy and throwing away the key. However, the fact is the law does not allow us to throw away the key, and the majority of these offenders complete their sentence and are released back into our community. Therefore, I ask that when you think of public safety, it's imperative that we consider offender accountability through appropriate use of incarceration, consideration for our crime victims, offender rehabilitation, and reentry services as we begin to prep these offenders for the future. Together, these concepts provide a balanced approach to public safety. You know, as Becky mentioned previously during her presentation, we attended the third annual Public Safety Realignment Conference held in Sacramento a few weeks ago, and Chief Lawrence and I presented regarding our model and approach. Looking at the concepts that we presented and supervising all of our offenders and focusing on the fact that former probationers could be your next AB 109er overnight, we chose to focus our model on all of our cases, providing additional resources and reducing the impacts. You know, the theme at that statewide conference, as Becky mentioned, integrating resources to achieve successful outcomes. Some of the speakers there emphasized community partnerships and developing county reentry programs to ensure that supervision and treatment are maximized. And we will continue to strive for those goals through the working with the master plan consultant and our justice partners as we develop our reentry program. You know, I've invited Chief Lawrence here today regarding to speak regarding our community supervision approach and some of the feedback that he's received from our conference. And at the conclusion of his presentation, Chief Lawrence and I can answer any questions that you might have. But at this point, I would like to introduce Rocklin Police Chief Ron Lawrence.
Good morning, Chief Lawrence.
Good morning. Thank you. Well, I tried to get some slide space from Marshall and Wayne, but I got bumped out, so I'm going to have to speak from the heart.
You should have talked to me.
I'll just talk to you, and I'll keep my comments brief, I promise. But I want to start by thanking you, the Board of Supervisors, and our CEO, David Bosch, for your support, because the truth is, without your support and trusting the professionals and how we dealt with prison realignment in Placer County, we would not be as effective as we have been. So thank you for standing behind us and trusting what we're telling you as the best model for our county. Chief Marshal Hopper mentioned the realignment presentation we did in Sacramento. It was a fantastic presentation. I'm guessing there was about 600 people there or so. Eclectic mix of folks from up and down the state, and as you can imagine, they're very varying viewpoints on this topic of prison realignment. And I'll be lying to tell you if I didn't get confronted by some of my colleagues in the law enforcement profession afterwards, other police chiefs up and down the state, asking me how I can embrace this idea. Well, don't get me wrong. None of us police chiefs wanted prison realignment. We didn't want this new reality, but it's here. And I am pleased to say that in Placer County, we're doing it right. And that's exactly what I tell my colleagues is, look, there's 58 different counties, there's 58 different ways to deal with it, and in Placer County, we've chosen a collaborative model that's working for us, and that's what we're proud of. And truth is, they're actually very envious of what we've got going on, and that's when they start asking questions about how they can change the way they do business. But first step is, you all got to get along. I mean, the collaboration is key. I've been introduced to partners at the county level through prison realignment that, frankly, I would not have had before. I've dealt more with HHS and Dr. Burton's crew than I would have ever imagined before prison realignment. And now we've got this bigger model at the 30,000-foot level. We can see what needs to be done and what's right for our county. The other thing we've got coming up, we're so proud of our model. We submitted for an award through the Plea Honors and Awards for our SIU probation model, and we will be receiving that award. We've got HHS folks that are practitioners on that team, our probation officers that are involved, and our SIU officers will all be getting an award this Thursday night. I hope you all can make it, because that is really an applaud from the Placer County law enforcement executives to this team for a job well done. You know, I mentioned that us police chiefs kind of went kicking and screaming into prison realignment, and Marshall mentioned public safety. If you envisioned locking up people and throwing away the key. And the truth is, maybe police chiefs and police departments did see that way in the past. But we recognize now if Wayne's jail is full and I can't put people in the jail because he's got no bed space, that doesn't do me a lot of good if I need really to have a criminal put in jail and to stay there. So we really have to be collaborative in learning what his needs are at that end and what services are available to help them at the larger level. So having the police departments involved in this is really key because we get it, we recognize the importance. And the truth is, police chiefs care about our communities. We care about keeping us safe. And so if our victims are safe, if our communities are safe, if that means that somebody is going to accept a change of behavior, if they're going to avail themselves to the resources that are available and change their behavior, then and become a productive member of our society, then sign me up. That's what success looks like. Our SIU model focuses just on the high-risk offenders. And originally it was just the PRCS caseload. But the truth is, in this county, we get along so well, we've morphed that into helping probation with their high-risk probation caseload as well. That allows Marshall's team to focus more quality work on their medium-risk and low-risk offenders. So what's that look like? Well, we typically have about 40 people on that caseload. It changes just about daily. That is the more high-risk folks. You heard Wayne Wu talk about the sophistication in the jails. Well, that criminal sophistication is now in our communities through PRCS as well. And so when you think about the high-risk caseload, we're thinking about the really high-level, high-risk criminal offenders. But that doesn't mean that they stay there forever. So let me explain the model of success. Just as they can work their way onto the SIU high-risk caseload by their behavior, they can work their way off of the SIU caseload. I'll tell you a real quick story. We had a gentleman that came on to the SIU caseload. He was a PRCS. He was deemed to be a high-risk offender based on his criminal history and his behavior in prison. He was on the SIU caseload for several months. Supervision was determined through supervision, he was determined to be wanting to make a change in his life. Now, the SIU model is not real warm and fuzzy. We're there to supervise and make sure that they're abiding by their terms, their conditions, and they're not breaking the law. And if they are, then we're going to hold them accountable. There's not a whole lot of touchy-feely, warm and fuzziness going on there because that is relegated to the medium-risk offenders, which Marshall's teams works on, and HHS. So this gentleman decided he wanted to make a change in his life. So he was complying with the conditions, he was complying with the stipulations in his PRCS and his probation terms, and he was eventually, after several months of supervision, transferred back to the probation caseload. After about a year of supervision by the probation team, with no technical violations, no new crimes, and an actual genuine desire to change his life, he was finally made it off probation. This gentleman later went on to get employed. He called his probation officer and asked to use a probation officer as a job reference. He's since got married, found employment, and is a productive member of society. Now, that might be a small percentage of the folks we're talking about, but if those folks, like this guy, want to make the change in their life and become productive members of our society and stop victimizing my community and your community, then we're all for it. And that is a model of success. And I'll just close with this. You know, a few weeks ago, we all heard about the case that happened in Roseville with Sammy Duran. That is a real-life picture of public safety in this county and how collaborative we work. It doesn't matter if you wear blue or green or tan in this county. If you wear a badge or you're part of our public safety team and there's a call for help, we're on our way. We have a fantastic sheriff, we have a fantastic DA, we have a fantastic probation chief, and we've got great police chiefs. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron. Oh, Ms. Baumann.
Okay, we'll wind up and move on to the Health and Human Services part of the story here. So Health and Human Services and the AB 109 program has expanded existing treatment programs and has established new treatment options under the AB 109 plan. As has been described, we are open to the right people, so Sheriff and Probation are the ones that are giving us the referrals, and so we are treating those people that they identify. We now have, has been identified, 2 practitioners that are providing in-custody and out-of-custody assessments
on persons that are referred, and persons receive clinical assessments and treatment recommendations. So far, there have been 253 people referred, and 210 people have been assessed. And that way, we are able to make recommendations about the appropriate level of treatment for substance abuse and for mental health services. All expanded and new substance abuse treatment providers are operational at this time, and together they really are providing a continuum of care, because we know, as has been stated, we really need a plan for each person, and so we want to make sure that they're getting the exact right treatment. Levels of care include in-custody treatment now, residential, transitional housing, and out-client services. The appropriate level of care for effective recovery and public safety is determined by Health and Human Services clinician in coordination with probation. The population is also being assessed for mental health services, and that number has actually increased to 22% of the folks are needing some sort of mental health services. We actually have two levels of mental health service. We have a lower intensity level that includes medication, case management, and therapy, and at this point, the majority of the people in the program are actually in that particular level of care. We have a second level of care that we started out having more people in, and again, we have capacity to surge back up if needed, and that's really a 24-hour intensive mental health program. It's similar to what we were talking about earlier with Children's System of Care, with wrapping services around people in our community, 24/7 response. We have about 3% of the population that are in that particular program at this time. And again, it could be expanded if that need. We'll continue to assess people and put them into the appropriate level. At this point, we have 114 people have participated in custody treatment, 56 in residential, and 57 in out-client and or transitional housing. So over 225 persons have participated in evidence-based substance abuse and mental health treatment programs. Early success indicators are those, what we are seeing is those who have completed successfully now have employment and income, have housing for themselves, are engaged with their family, and have connections to other resources that they need, medical services, mental health services, and veteran services. At this point, our Health and Human Services providers are now providing enhanced coordination between probation, court, and treatment. We're working with Marshall and his team to make sure that the probation staff have access to updated treatment progress of people so that we can make timely decisions in terms of responding to people that are doing well and people that are not doing well. Health and Human Services is now attending the monthly community integration team, meeting the goal of expediting the assessment process so that we meet people as quickly as we can. And residential programs, in terms of an update, are nearing capacity in this year, and additional services are anticipated to be needed. Particularly in the Roseville area, where we have the majority of our population that's residing, we have transitional housing options, and we have one house. So we are at capacity there and are looking for, we'll be looking to do that expansion. I just would make a note, as we're looking at evidence-based programs and helping people to be successful in our community, an alternative to residential is this transitional housing without client. That allows people to be in a little less structured setting, still being supervised by probation, but to be able to practice those skills in more real life. And we know that practicing those skills is one of the ways that we really do see recovery. So to wind up, our 13-14 budget has allowed us to hire a new assessment, which is very much needed on the team. We are optimistic we'll be able to be meeting a court request, which is to do assessments on those people that are pre-sentenced so we can give more timely clinical recommendations at that point. We also expect to be staffing the transition center when that gets operational this year, and have both our assessment staff providing assessments and programs, as well as some of the provider staff being able to run programs out of that site. Also, additional staff will assist us with improving our data collection and reporting more timely access in terms of outcomes of treatment. And we do expect to be able to increase treatment capacity in this next year with additional resources. So I'll just wind up with another example. You heard one from our chief of Rocklin, so I'll just give you an example of the kind of person. This one came, so as you know, people come into their they're arrested and sentenced with new crimes in Placer County, and those are the ones that are mostly in the jail. The ones that are coming out of parole are coming into the probation supervision. And this is the story of a person, I'll call him Scott, who returned to Placer County on the post-release community supervision. This followed multiple jail admissions and prison terms for 5 DUI offenses, as well as drug-related offenses. He was separated from his family and community, as well as unemployed in this process. Scott participated in individual therapy, intensive case management, self-help, probation services, and he also completed his DUI programs while he was on the PRCS program. With this support, Scott has successfully completed the program, re-engaged with his family, re-engaged with his spiritual community, and is employed in the construction field. Scott today is a self-supporting member of our community. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I don't know if you're going to wrap up the end, so.
No, that is.
Any questions,
Be
comments?
done with our presentation.
Supervisor Durant.
I just have a comment. Has it really been 2 years with the implementation of AB 109?
Yeah.
I can remember when AB 109 was just being talked about in as to whether or not it was even going to be implemented, and here we are 2 years past, and I want to thank all of the members of the team that are here. Also, there are quite a few members of the team that are not here, the folks that did the real hard work in putting together our community corrections partnership and the way that we implement AB 109 here in the county. And it really is a testament to the cooperation and the collaboration of all of our agencies in here. And we're in a very unique place because there are a lot of counties out there that probation, sheriff, DA, HHS don't really get along and they don't function really well. And it's a testament to your ability to work together and to care enough about what you do to have come together and with a little poking and prodding, but to come together, agree on a plan that works for the most part, and to take a policy that was basically forced on us and try to do what's in the best interest of our community. And I also want to thank our board for being able to allow the experts to make these very important decisions for our community. Again, there are other places in the state where boards have a tendency to inject themselves and micromanage what's going on with a big ticket item like this, and I appreciate the fact that we were able to trust enough in our experts in the field to implement this, and hopefully we'll continue to do the best that we can and make lemonade of the lemon that we've kind of received from the state. So thank you.
Well said, Supervisor. Thank you. Is that it?
That concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we'll move to item 11, almost 11. County Clerk Elections Funding for Voting Equipment. Mr. Ronco?
Good morning, thank you.
Morning.
Chairman Holmes. Good morning, one and all. I'd like to start off by passing along our regrets for Jim McCauley, the County Clerk Recorder, Registrar of Voters. He had a conflict in Sacramento today, so he's not able to be here, but I am here, Ryan Ronco, your Assistant County Registrar and County Recorder. With me is Lisa Kramer, our Assistant County Clerk, and Gina Myron, our Administrative Services Officer, and Leanne Crook, our Secretary to Jim McCauley, who are showing great restraint by sitting very far away from us, apparently, in case they have to answer questions. We're asking today your permission to approach the State Voting Modernization Board and the California Secretary of State in order to apply for state and federal funds to purchase 3 items for the elections side of our house. One is a vote-by-mail ballot sorter and scanner to improve the management and processing of incoming absentee ballots. The second item is an in-house official ballot printer to reduce ballot waste and to prepare for the eventuality of same-day voter registration, which is on track to come to California after implementation of a statewide voter database, which is expected around 2016 or so. And the third item is non-volatile or no battery enclosed memory cards to improve the functioning of our polling place ballot scanning equipment. There are federal and state funds allocated to Placer County for voting modernization. The Federal Help America Vote Act of 2002 and California's Proposition 41, which was also passed in 2002, which was a bond measure to improve voting equipment. In order to seek access to these funds, we need to show the entities that gatekeep these funds that your board has given us permission to approach them with our request. And if all goes according to plan, we will receive funding for Placer County to make these purchases with no general fund money needed for these upgrades. Depending on what we hear from these two entities, we will be back before your board to request a budget revision for some or all of these purchases with the hope that we can have them fully operational for the June 2014 primary election. And with that, we're here to entertain any questions that you might have.
Supervisor Duran.
Yeah, Ryan, a quick question. I know that I've had some constituents talk about voting equipment, and I know that there's been controversy in the past. How do we go about procuring this type of equipment? Is there a certified list of providers? How does that work? Can you just a quick and dirty?
Sure. Yes, there is. The states, there's a partnership between the federal entities that do the dropping and humidity controlling and all of that sort of testing of equipment, and then the state certifies vendors to be able to provide voting equipment to the counties. That process has been handcuffed as of late because it's a very intensive process to be able to be certified, as one would expect and hope. And because of that, we haven't had a lot of movement with new equipment coming in. So really all the equipment that was available to us back in early 2000 is roughly the same equipment that's available to us now. This equipment will enhance the equipment that we purchased, the ballots scanning, the optical scan equipment that we currently use here in Placer County that our voters tend to really appreciate because it provides a paper ballot to be able to go back to be able to certify election results. This would really enhance that operation with memory cards that would be able to lead us into, I think, the next 10 or 15 years being able to capture that information in a non-volatile manner, which means that we don't have to change out internal batteries after every 18 months or so to be able to ensure that that data stays current. And then, of course, these other two items would also enhance different operations. The ballot printing has been about the same ever since I've been around. Again, it's a process where the state asks for people to be certified, and there's only a couple of ballot printers out there that are certified to be able to print official ballots. But many counties are looking at this option of being able to print ballots themselves, to be able to not necessarily take care of the large vote-by-mail population that we have, but those people that want to come to the office to be able to receive a ballot or who request an absentee ballot for a one-time use. Being a certified ballot printer in-house would allow us to be able to not have to guess as to how many ballots we need to order for them. We would be able to target those individuals, not have the waste that is associated with that. And then, of course, we have a very labor-intensive process to sort ballots, and being able to bring in some equipment to be able to do that would be a wonderful upgrade as well.
That's good. It sounds like there's not only a state process, internal controls, if you will, then you've got the process for the actual device, and then you have your own internal controls to process as well. Okay, good.
And I also want to mention, because it is important, there was a change in the law just recently that will allow counties to be able to look toward trying to certify systems as well, as opposed to vendors, and it's a really exciting idea. It will help L.A. County out quite a bit, and through helping out L.A. County might actually have some implications for helping Placer County out. So we're looking for that to wind its way through the process and probably be provide fruit for us maybe in the next year or two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Euler.
Is there anything in what's being requested today, or maybe in what you just updated on, that will allow us to actually use the equipment that we purchased the way it was intended to be used?
Thank you for that question. Yes. What I just mentioned about this update to allowing counties to maybe provide some guidance in this process of certifying voting equipment and putting together its own platform of voting equipment, might be able to allow us to use the equipment that we have currently that isn't able to provide the same functionality that it did when we first purchased the equipment back in 2002. And hopefully we can be able to provide accurate, very fast results like we were able to do back in 2002.
Thank you.
Sure.
Supervisor Montgomery.
Thank you. Ryan, Lisa, thank you for coming today. The question came up this morning in Medlar's specifically about the vote-by-mail scanner as to would this help get results more quickly out to the community as to elections? And do you have a feel for that?
Well, it won't help on election night when people are very eager to be able to get results, certainly to what Supervisor Euler was alluding to as well. What this sorter and scanner can do is be able to take a process where we use people to receive those incoming vote-by-mail ballots, look at the data that's on the front, and place them in piles to be able to break them down to the voting precinct level. Then be able to look at the signature on the outside of that envelope and compare it to the signature that's on that voter's registration card to determine whether or not that ballot is eligible to be counted. This sorter and scanner will improve that process by speeding up the sorting process and also provide us a picture of that signature on the envelope on a computer screen that we could be able to make those comparisons a lot quicker than looking at the envelope, looking at the screen, looking at the envelope, looking at the screen. So it will speed up our processes internally. It will not provide us direct relief in being able to provide election results quickly. We have our own internal processes that we're trying to update because of the way that the Secretary of State likes to make sure that the process is secure, so that we can be able to provide faster updates, quicker updates. But this equipment won't bring us there, unfortunately.
Okay.
But it's believe me, it's a great equipment.
No, I believe
Okay.
you, but they'll be very disappointed because
I'm sure.
apparently there are a few political junkies who watch late at night on election night and are very frustrated that results aren't announced earlier than they would hope. And interestingly, it was none of us. It was no one who held an elected position who expressed this
Right.
interest. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the board on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for action. It's been moved and, did I hear a second? There was. Oh, good. Yeah. This is item 11, County Clerk Elections Funding for Voting Equipment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the item is moved. Thank you so much for bringing this forward. Now we'll move back to Maureen Baumann and Health and Human Services Adult System of Care, Contract Amendments, California Psychiatric Transitions, and Vista Pacifica Enterprises Incorporated. Ms. Baumann.
Thank you. Good morning again, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I have two contracts for you with this item, and I'm requesting that you approve the following amendments for mandated medically necessary mental health services for Placer County residents who really have the highest levels of need for the current contract term, which started July 2012 and goes through this current fiscal year, June 30th, 2014, and to authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to sign these amendments and approve subsequent amendments. The first is with, as was mentioned, California Psychiatric Transitions. It's an increase of $121,425,000 for a revised total of $301,000, and that would include $72,000, almost $73,000 of county cost. And then Vista Pacifica would be an increase of $185,000 for a revised total of $485,000 with $111 of county general fund. So Placer County Adult System of Care provides mandated mental health services to approximately 5,000 residents each year. Of this amount, no more than 5 need the services of these two particular contracts. They are specialized and are really for those folks that have fairly high needs. They are meeting the needs of clients with the most acute and chronic mental health conditions who would not have their needs met through other providers. And generally, we have tried other providers first, and they're not working, and so we need to move them to places where we can actually get the services that they need in order to recover. The California Psychiatric Transitions is in Delhi, California. It provides an alternative for clients who would otherwise be in state hospital. This program has a unique unit that provides intensive services to those that have previously not been restored to competency. So people are in state hospital for 3 years, and if they are not restored to competency, they are returned to the county as our responsibility. This program actually has a very good program, and we are actually seeing it work to actually help somebody gain competency. So we're quite pleased with the results that we're seeing in this program. Vista Pacifica provides the specialized services for some of the most difficult to place clients, again, folks that have been exited out of other locked services. They provide services in a secure setting and really help people with skill development. They help them reintegrate back into their community, and it's in Riverside, and as they get improve in their skills, they can move closer to home. They've been especially effective with clients who've had assaultive behavior and have been successful in helping them to change their behavior, which makes them be able to move. So we would expect to use these services are really what we feel like are the most cost-effective and creating the best results that we have. We're going to use less other contracts to pay for the increases in these contracts, so we're not asking for any budget changes. We'll manage the dollars within the current programs by using less of our current contracts. These contracts were reviewed by the Mental Health, Alcohol, and Drug Board on October 28th, and they are also recommending approval. So with that, I would answer any questions and recommend approval.
Any questions? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wish to address the board on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for action. It's been moved and seconded to approve item 12A, 1A and B, contract amendments, California Psychiatric Transitions and Vista Pacific Enterprises Incorporated. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none. Now we'll move to item 12B, Mental Health Services Act Annual Update. Ms. Baumann.
So thank you. This next item is to give you an update on the services and supports that have been provided to over 12,000 people in Placer County as a result of the ongoing implementation of the Mental Health Services Act, and to request that your board adopt the Mental Health Services Act Fiscal Year 2013-14 Annual Update, which is a responsibility of the Board of Supervisors. In 2005, Placer County received funding and implemented services under the state-funded Mental Health Services Act, known as MHSA, and Placer County has used this state funding to expand intensive mental health services, crisis services to people with severe mental illness, and developed evidence-based prevention programs to reach those who are at risk of mental illness. In addition, these funds have supported housing projects, staff and provider development, and facility and technology improvements. The funding of almost $12 million has been managed to allow these services to remain stable during the recent economic downturn. It is budgeted in the Health and Human Services system of care divisions for the county-operated programs, contracted programs, and necessary administration support for management and reporting. The MHSA consists of 5 components, each with different goals, and the Board of Supervisors is required to approve the annual update that reports outcomes and expenditures for fiscal year 11-12, and program plans and expenses for the 13-14 fiscal year. It's a sort of an odd process in terms of the timing. Information is included from the program evaluation. That is our first 2-year program evaluation that was included for 2010 through 12. That was largely demographic, and we expect to be able to be reporting on additional outcomes in this next year. So just to highlight some of the programs, Direct Services for People, in partnership with communities, served 255 people in this last year, and will provide intensive out-client treatment and services to assist them to remain safely in their homes. The cost per person is high, about $10,000 per person, and that's because it's actually what I talked about earlier with AB 109. It's the intensive mental health services, providing resources to the community, whatever it takes, 24/7 response to people that are in the community. The majority is done by a contract agency, and there are small programs that are county-operated. The results are quite remarkable. We've seen hospital interventions reduced by 32%, psychiatric hospital days decreased by 44%, and jail days decreased by 22%, comparing the people in the program to their previous experience. Crisis and follow-up services will provide treatment interventions and assistance with appropriate services to 875 people who will be evaluated in crises but not hospitalized. These people will then be followed up and provide additional resources and assisted to get into needed programs, and we expect the increased engagement in treatment and a reduction of future hospitalizations as a result of this. Evidence-based peer support services will provide 23,000 education and support services to families, children, and adults. These are with adult peer advocates, with family advocates, and with education and outreach workers in the Latino and Native communities. These programs reach people who haven't been engaged in treatment and work to improve access to mental health services and assist with improving the overall mental health service delivery system. We also, the Act includes us to provide workforce education and training, and so we provide county employees, contract agencies, consumers, and family members education and training to develop skills to improve service delivery. On the capital facilities, we identified earlier the community house, so these funds, with your approval, spent about $500,000 towards that project. It was part of the funding that made that project happen, but it was approved and is part of the kind of example of a facility that we think makes sense for this use of this funds. In addition, these funds are going to help with the electronic medical record that is part of the systems of care, a mandate for counties, and something that will make us much more efficient and effective as we go forward. Prevention and early intervention services are designed to prevent mental illness or provide early interventions to reduce the severity of illness, and these programs provided services to 3,300 people in this year with strengthening families and youth with parenting skills, therapy, social skill development, to note a few, as well as providing particular interventions for specific populations like the elderly and new mothers who experience depression, so some depression-specific therapy was included. We also have a charge to do 5% of our funding with innovation programs. These are programs that are not evidence-based, but projects that we want to do an experiment to see if we can have an impact. And we worked with mini grants and larger grants to see if we couldn't engage people in our community by developing sort of the natural supports around them. And so our innovation program put in place through the community foundations in Tahoe and down here mini grants to allow people to propose to us ways to really support those people in their communities, and we were really pleased with the results of that. The Mental Health, Alcohol, and Drug Advisory Board held a public hearing, as they are required to do. We had a 30-day posting for this plan. We received no public comments as a result of that. And the Campaign for Community Wellness, which is the steering committee that oversees this, is quite pleased with the progress on the implementation and is supportive of continuing these programs. So with that, I think I'll end and be happy to answer any questions, but recommend approval.
Thank you, Maureen. Any questions from board members? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wish to address the board? Seeing none, we'll bring it back, ask for adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the Mental Health Services Act fiscal year 2013-14 annual update. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the item is moved. Thank you. So that's what you guys are hanging around for. We'll move to item 13, Sheriff Allocation Change Physician Pathologist. Captain Hutchins.
Good morning. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Captain Don Hutchinson with the Sheriff's Office. I want to thank you for this opportunity to present this item. As Captain Wu mentioned, he's moving on to the field ops, and I'm taking his place as the jail commander, corrections commander. Actually, I'm already over there. So I appreciate this opportunity to deal with this issue that we've been wanting to take care of and do something with for some time. With me, I have Chief Deputy Coroner Dennis Watt, and he'll be able to answer questions when we're done. But I just wanted to, we have two items that are two things that we want you to address today. So today we're asking you to approve the attached allocation ordinance amendment deleting one sheriff's lieutenant and adding one physician in the Sheriff's Support Services Division. We're also asking you to authorize the Personnel Department to conduct an open recruitment for the Physician 2 position and the sheriff to extend an offer of employment once a candidate has been selected for the pathology position. As a way of background, we currently have a 6-month backlog from the date of autopsy to completed death certificate. This extended amount of time causes hardship for families who must wait for this certificate to receive life insurance benefits, and conclude other matters associated with the decedent. This delay has been caused by a significant increase in complex death investigations in the last few years. In 2012, our coroner's unit completed over 400 autopsies. The American Medical Association and the National Association of Medical Examiners recommends a forensic pathologist complete no more than 250 autopsies per year. The addition of one full-time pathologist will allow Dr. Hendrickson to finalize the current 103 open cases awaiting death certificates and eliminating the existing backlog. We currently have contracts with Nevada County and Sarah County to provide pathology services. These contracts help offset the cost of our existing pathologist. With the potential addition of a second pathologist, Yuba County has also expressed an interest in contracting for pathology services with Placer County, beginning in the fiscal year 14-15. With the reduction of existing contract pathology costs and projected revenue, we estimate next fiscal year's net county cost for a second pathologist will be about $136,000. Our related costs in the current fiscal year will be borne by the Sheriff's Office current budget this year. And we're asking you to take care of those two items, and if you have any questions, we're here to answer it.
Any questions from board members?
I just
Supervisor.
want to thank you very much for bringing these items forward. I was contacted by an individual who had been waiting. She indicated that it was actually longer than 6 months for a death certificate, and they were about to lose her father's home because they had not been able to get the appropriate paperwork to deal with the banks and all of that. And it was just absolutely heart-wrenching for me to, have to tell this woman that there was nothing we could do to move this forward more quickly. And thank you so much for bringing this to our board, and I hope we get a supportive vote for you today.
Thank you. I think Chief Deputy Watt feels the same way because he has to handle those calls and deal with those issues quite often.
And
so.
they're not easy.
They're not easy.
I mean, this was literally the only thing that this individual's father had been able to leave to his family, and they were on the verge of losing it. So.
Right, and we think with this we can make great strides toward resolving that situation.
Great. Thank you.
Any other board member comments?
And this is more of a procedural thing. I noticed that the ordinance is uncodified, as noted in the board report, but it doesn't actually say that in the item on our agenda. So I just want to make sure that we understand that we're making an amendment to an uncodified ordinance.
Oh, yeah. The allocation ordinance is an uncodified ordinance. The board adopts it at an annual basis with the budget.
All right, good. All righty. Anyone in the audience wish to address the board on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for action. It's been moved and seconded to allocation change for physician pathologists. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. Okay, that concludes the open session of our meeting. We will now adjourn to closed session.
The board will now adjourn to closed session for a conference with legal counsel to discuss the four items of existing litigation shown on page 4. The board will also meet in conference with its labor negotiators regarding the employee organization PPEO.
board has just returned to closed session, and we'll now hear a closed session report from our county council.
In closed session, the board discussed the items, had a conference with legal counsel on 4 items of existing litigation in County of Placer versus Allison Landman and Paul Landman. The board heard a report and gave direction to counsel. In Susan M. Courtney versus County of Placer, the board heard a status report and gave direction to counsel. In Lancaster versus Marshall Hopper, the board heard a report and authorized the county to defend and indemnify the individual employees named by Mr. Lancaster in those actions. And in Elizabeth Armstrong versus County of Placer and Sheriff Bonner, the board authorized the defense and indemnity of Sheriff Bonner in that litigation. Under conference with labor negotiators, the board heard a report of their labor negotiators and gave direction to their labor negotiation team. That concludes the closed session report.
And that concludes the items on our agenda for today.